Welcome, everybody. Intern Secrets, relationship therapy nuggets you would get if you spent $500 or more in therapy. I am like you. I've had relationships that needed a lot of work, and I wanted them to work more than anything. And many of these relationships did not work out, including I have been divorced. I have had friends also that I felt would be mine for life, but we parted ways, and it made me very sad. I have felt lonely, and I felt that life was disappointing, but I have also felt that I'm just not very good at it. But in my journey of rediscovery and redevelopment, I have found and have been led to and have applied some previously unknown tools of relationship, healthy boundaries, and personal development that have had incredible impact on my life. The life I currently live, it's amazing. And these tools have given dynamic character to my relationships that not only empower me to improve my engagements with others, but to catalyze the laws of attraction that bring people into my world who embrace me as I continue on this journey to discover my best version of self. You're going to walk away from this session with an incredible amount of value related to the topic of relationship. There are hours and hours of data and information I could go into, and it would take weeks to cover. But I know where you will find nuggets that will make hard and fast difference almost immediately. And you will see that I will focus on these nuggets. These nuggets we will go over will not only give you incredible tools for enhancing your relationships, but you will also find how it can be incredibly relatable to friends and family. So for complete transparency, I'm actually an LMFT intern, licensed marriage and family therapist intern. And I'm going to reference some of the science behind the practical components that I'm going to be sharing. But just know and understand that more than just another counselor or therapist, I am actually a victorious recipient and practitioner of everything I'm going to be speaking about. And more importantly, it has made my life and my relationships absolutely incredible. And yours will start to evolve to be absolutely incredible if you take this counsel and you run with it. So be warned. This is hard and fast information that may not necessarily be sugar-coated as might normally be given by a therapist who holds your hand and guides you through a journey that may take months. You may require that down the road you engage with me or one of my recommended therapists. That's totally up to you and to your style and timing for personal development. Everyone's journey with therapies is their own pace. But this information I'm going to give you will allow you to evolve and may give you a huge kickstart in your own personal development journey. It is information that has a final intent to change your life for the better. Your life and relationships will get better. It has simply been incorporated and engaged in too many others' lives to think that you are the exception to the rule. But of course, it only works as hard as you do. If we started this therapy session today with you as my client, about 40 minutes of the 60-minute session would be you discussing the issues as you see them. You would be asked about your past. I would ask you about your goals. I would ask you about your partner, or what your partner and family want from you, or what do they want for you. And then I would ask, what do you want for yourself? And then I would ask the golden question. This is the question, the biggest and deepest question that truly initiates the introspection needed to initiate the process of personal and individual development. You may want to write this down. Here it is. What does the perfect version of your life look like? If you woke up tomorrow and everything was satisfactorily resolved, what would that look like? That's the golden question. Let's say a year from now, everything works, and your relationships heal, and your issues become resolved. What would that look like? What does that perfect version of your life look like? What is it like with your friends, your career, your personal life, your love life? Describe that to me. What happens next is that you would think about it for a minute, maybe need some prodding, and if you were in a really depleted or thought-stricken state, I may need to actually incorporate a pattern interrupt. Write that down. Are you familiar with the pattern interrupt? Intern secret number 1. This is going to be a quick tangent that covers this intern secret that is actually a remarkable gift for you. Pattern interrupts are a whole different topic, but are absolutely fascinating. It's an essential stopgap activity or engagement that puts a marker and change in the current energy of your existence. Something that ignites actually the mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of your cells, and get you in a different plane of thinking. They open your mind a bit. There are a variety of ways to initiate the pattern interrupt, but whatever it is, it will shock or jar the system out of its current energy or current plane. The most likely pattern interrupt would have you to do some quick exercises like jumping jacks, or even do a few rebel yells at the top of your lungs. Seriously, it makes a difference. These stimulate the cells, increases oxygen flow, including in your brain, and allows the connections, the synapses to activate and stimulate thinking that was not happening prior to this golden question. So if you are struggling with the question, do a pattern interrupt on yourself. Warn your roommates or whoever's around so they're not concerned at the bursts of noise and activity, but then do it. Pause and restart after you have done this, a minimum of 30 seconds of the pattern interrupt. Okay, if you did it, you're ready to kick some booty. If you didn't, you need to be more proactive in your self-development. You deserve it. So with the mind a bit kickstarted, let's go back to the golden question. What do you want your life to look like? Your relationships, your work, your personal development, your self-care. What habits have you stopped? What have you started? What goals have you achieved and what goals are you progressing towards? Because you're not verbalizing these to me, I want you to actually write these down. Take as many pages as required, get as much detail as possible, get it out. Here's another secret. The act of documenting your personalized ambition kickstarts the momentum. Many non-scientific personal development speakers will suggest or acknowledge that the laws of the universe that will start immediately lining up the pieces so that this future is set in motion. I'm not going to go too deep into that type of supernatural possibility, but I will tell you that there is actually a science behind it. It's called manifesting. Jason Silva is a well-known TV host of various programs, including Brain Games and Origins. He is not just a media personality, though. This guy is a University of Miami philosophy major who is incredibly savvy on the cutting edge of regards to brain development and neural pathway development. In podcasts and in writings, he explains how, like in a nutshell, that this type of verbalization of where our lives will be headed actually catalyze components of the lobes of our mind to be more astute to opportunities that will put us in the path of what we have manifested. It's similar to the effect that after we purchase a particular type of gray car, we notice that gray car every time we see one, much more than previous. The point is that the brain is wired to do two very specific things. This is important, so write this down. Number one, protect us, and number two, give us what we tell it we want. Now, often, due to our histories in biology, the protect us portion dominates, and we don't take risks, or we don't want to offend or create conflict, or we simply allow life to happen around us. Manifesting puts the pieces in place to initiate the secondary part, and it works remarkably well. Your mind, your spirit will continually see and take notes of steps for these events to happen as opportunities are placed in your path. Keep your mind open to the opportunities as they will come. Don't be afraid to act on them. And most important, be grateful when they come. So grateful. That is such a key component. These baby steps may or may not ultimately be part of the deliberate path that leads to the fulfillment of what you profess and claim to be seeking. But the fact that you are taking them, taking risks, stepping outside your normal path, steps in the direction of ambition, it is powerful and it is noteworthy. So what does this have to do with the relationship? So amazingly much. As you and your partner verbalize and create the best version of your existences, opportunities, gifts, connections, and conversations are going to be put in your path that will create shortcuts and insights on how to get there, how to move into what you both really want. Your brain will actually make that happen. It'll make you aware when it's happening around you. And I can't wait to continue to show you how this really works. But this concludes the first portion of this model. Next secret. As your therapist, one of the biggest obstacles we see in people is the depleted or deteriorated sense of self. This can be associated with a depression or a traumatic experience. It's often related to looking back in hindsight with regrets for ill-timed or inappropriate choices. So here's your next new awareness. There are no wrong paths or steps. There are only paths towards success or paths that provided learning. Let me repeat that. There are only paths towards success or paths that provided learning. So at this point, you may say to me as a therapist, bull crap. I have made dozens and hundreds of wrong steps. I've made so many mistakes that I regret. Perhaps you have. But I promise you that every step, whether giving regrets or giving experience or giving success, has always provided learning. Learning for you and undoubtedly learning that you can share with another that without question will give them a hand up for their journey. Nothing is wasted. Your experience will be a gift in their life for what you are able to share. This may require a mind shift. This is therapy. This is all about mind and body and spirit shifts to a place closer to where you maximize your true potential. There are no wrong paths or steps. There are only paths towards success or paths that provided learning. Let me repeat that. There are only paths towards success or paths that provided learning. So at this point, you may say to me, if I was your therapist, bull crap. I have made dozens and hundreds of wrong mistakes that I regret. Perhaps you have. But I promise you that every step, whether giving regrets or giving experience or giving success, has always provided learning. Learning for you and undoubtedly learning for who you can share it with. Another person that you could share that with will undoubtedly give them a hand up for their journey. Nothing is wasted. Your experience will be a gift in their life for what you're able to share. Now, this may require a mind shift, and this is the point of therapy. This is all about mind and body and spirit shifts that get you to a place closer to where you can maximize your true potential. We are going to evolve the way we see life and relationships and develop a sense of personal empowerment that becomes our roadmap to our next level of self. And this is not just ambition, this is execution. Once you share with me what your current version of your perfect existence looked like a year from now, I would affirm the value of what you just shared. I would anticipate that the description would be of quite an improvement in your relationships, improvement in successes. And if I gave any recommendation or feedback to share with you, it would likely be this. I love where you are starting and I love your ambition. But what I want for you to do is think bigger. Make sure that there are no limiting beliefs that are defining your ambitions. Don't minimize your power and potential and influence for great things. So here's this next secret, number 2. I would likely then want to explore one of the biggest tools of psychology and counseling, one of the biggest secrets that therapists use to look at a client's inner influencers. To understand the secret, we have to look at what was our environment when we were young. Was it usually peaceful or was it chaotic? Were relationships firm and consistent and trusted? Or were relationships like roller coasters in the dark, never knowing what direction or pull was coming next? The reason this is explored is this, and I remember when my graduate school textbook covered this topic, I found it fascinating. And you will find it incredibly relatable to your past and to your present. But here it is. We all develop a blueprint of how our world and by how we are treated and how we treat others in the first 4 to 10 years of our life. This blueprint becomes our basis for much of our interactions. And listen to this part because this self-awareness is pivotal. We have a few versions of the psychological effect that, for better or for worse, affects most of us in the remainder of our life. It impacts what we subliminally pursue within our social ecosystem, the world and people around us. The phenomenon is sometimes referred to as mirror exposure, the mirror exposure effect, or the idea that familiarity breeds attraction. In a nutshell, this incredibly common phenomenon is that we have a tendency to seek out and be attracted to elements or even the whole of the familiar environment that we were raised in, even if that environment was toxic, harsh, unhealthy, or even destructive. I am very close to an individual who has made an amazing life for herself in a world of teaching, service, outreach to others. She is a beautiful creature who gives generously. She is a supportive, loving spouse whose husband has generated incredible wealth through industry and successful career. But there is something interesting about her, something that is a strange tendency that deserves further investigation. Her husband approached me once and shared with me a story about how they had purchased a second home. They spent 5 years with the home. And in the time they owned the home, they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in this remodeling and dealt very personally with extremely difficult contractors and chaotic scenarios with issues that arose and even challenges after the remodel with renting the property and hosting events. It was just challenge after challenge. This was not an HGTV remodel special, but it was a significant drain on the emotional health and precious time of both husband and wife, like incredibly exhausting. Both the husband and the wife expressed relief and gratitude when after 5 years, The vacation property was put on the market and sold at a healthy profit. But as money is not an issue for them, it was seemingly obvious that moving forward, the better option for the serenity and peace of their life was an option that would simply, in the future, rent a vacation home in a desired location rather than dealing with the chaos of purchasing, renting, remodeling, etc. Done and done. But not hardly even a year later, his wife was looking at homes and seriously considering the next project. This wise husband minimally engages some of the themes with his wife, but these ideas seemed obvious to him that he would never crossing into that process he would never consider crossing into that process ever again deliberately. He even suggests that a logical next step would be selling off more assets, downsizing, and simplifying, but not his wife, and he was really confused. Remember, it's not about the money for them. It's not about having homes available to rent or stay at. It's not about having a second home that is ours. None of these are express motivators with either one of them. So I dug more in the conversation. I asked, like I'm asking you, but about the early childhood of his wife. It came out that his wife had an extremely chaotic childhood. She was a middle child and by age 9 was taking care of younger sibling babies and changing diapers and feeding, all while watching older siblings who partied and dealt with young teen pregnancies, all while mom worked and dad was mostly non-present with questionable side relationships. The only constant in the environment was the constant chaos and inconsistency and challenge. I suggested to the husband that the idea of familiarity breeding attraction, that this chaos was actually something that she despised, but she could not help but seek out as a strong component of what keeps her interest. She is familiar with the contention and chaos, and although she does not engage with it in her personal relationships, as she's a sweet and kind woman, she is drawn inadvertently towards opportunities in her external circles. The husband, his face and whole countenance changed as I explained this to him. I could almost see him going through a dozen or more historical scenarios in his head that he had had with his sweet wife that absolutely lined up with that theory. It started to make a connection for him. This gentleman stood there for a few seconds with his mind spinning until he finally said to me, "Wow, that unfortunately makes so much sense." So, in regard to the relationships you are in, what was your past? Was it always perfect, so you may have incredibly high expectations? Or was it damaged and perhaps the drama of the past has an allure to you because it is familiar, even though it is unwanted? Did you feel safe? Did you feel abandoned? Did you feel loved? Did you feel lonely? Did you have experience that may have caused trauma? This absolutely deserves exploration. Homework assignment number 2. Homework assignment number 2, write out highlights from your past and then consider and explore more current behaviors and interactions. Is there a connection? Is there a relationship? Are there expectations between both or amongst the participants that could be applicable to the unwanted issues that are currently being manifested? As a therapist, I would have you write down and look for relationships in those experiences of the past and the present. As we conclude this section, we once again pose the question, what does this exploration of self have to do with relationship? Everything. We are creatures that can evolve, grow, develop, learn, but we are also creatures of habit and environments. Changing habits starts with awareness, who we are looking at and who we want to become. But also, we have to look at the influencers that put us in the places we are in the first place. We don't want to assign value. We don't want to say things were good or things were bad. We just simply want to look at what it is or what it was. So looking at these elements as individuals and partners in time, without judgment or without shame or assigning value, that will let me as your therapist lead you to a place that will open your minds to seeing your partner and yourselves as authentically as possible. No masks, no caricatures of who we are expected to be, just real and exactly where we are in this moment. And creating that pathway to develop into who we are meant to be as individuals and partners. So embrace the vision of what you are developing into. This is incredibly exciting and you are owning it. Let's move to part 3. I know that you have undoubtedly received incredible value for what we've covered so far. Not because I'm conceited, but because I've put my heart and soul into researching and identifying the tools that would have been so instrumental to me and the people I care about deeply who trudge through their own relationship journeys. I'm going to share with you an uncomfortable truth. Most of my therapy sessions were were more about checking the boxes of going than I can recall of actually getting tools, strategies, and perspective that empowered me. I love therapists for taking on such a difficult and engaged career, but sometimes they just don't have the sense of engagement that truly provides the value clients need. That is important to me. And I create these courses so that you can fast track the components that may otherwise take a month of sessions at, 150, 160 a session or more. So you're welcome. Do your friends the absolute gift of letting them know about my podcast and these courses that will really are a dynamite value. So next, we're going to explore a couple of relationship components that are some of the most unrecognized but common issues that smother or starve relationship. Let me share a story that will provide context. In the middle of my personal transformation journey, I found myself in a scenario where my wife and partner of 14 years and I were separated. At this stage of our relationship, it was very strained, and I was in constant states of prayer that were simply engagements to my Maker, that were to open to any insights and gifts and tools He felt willing to send my way. And as I had manifested the reception of answers, they came. And the first answer I'm going to share may raise your eyebrows a little. It actually came to me in the form of this beautiful, blonde, professional, dynamic woman who happened to sit next to me on the exit row of a flight to the West Coast. Now, let me give you a little bit of context. I had spent 2 years previous to this moment in pretty deep exploration of self in my past. One of the elements that was so profound of a gift and awareness that I was given was this. I began to sense that I was to look for opportunities for connection and relationship and engagement where I could learn something from someone that my Maker or the universe had put in my path. And having practiced this type of interconnected ecosystem engagement, I'd already had quite a few interesting and unexpected conversations, tons of interactions that I was actually looking forward to going on flights and starting conversations with complete strangers, if you can believe that. And by this time, I'd already gotten pretty good at talking to people in lines at grocery stores or wherever I was. So I engaged this lady in conversation on this 3 hour plus flight, and our conversation was actually incredible. She was the vice president of sales and marketing for a multi-million dollar company that had products at high-end retail locations throughout the US. And she looked the part of someone who was very comfortable hanging out at Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom. But she was also completely unpretentious as she shared about the role and how she got it. She obviously was just a well-rounded, insightful, and dynamic person. She shared insights and pictures about her relationship with her model boyfriend, who lived in Miami, where she had traveled a few times a month to go stay with him. Now, just to give you a big picture, he was like a Greek god. They were a couple essentially straight out of the pages of GQ or Vogue magazine photo shoot. But here's where it gets interesting. I don't remember exactly how our conversation evolved the way it did, but we ended up discussing how I was struggling to feel connected to my wife as we had been separated for almost 18 months at this point of the previous 2 years. We rarely had intimacy. We were rarely having sex. There was no romance, in spite of the fact that I was still asking around and we would go on dates. She would go, the wife would go, but she wasn't really into it. And so she in no uncertain terms would have already kind of divorced me, but our upbringing was one of those that regarded divorce as kind of the last and worst case scenario option. So we stayed married in spite of hardly communicating. And I personally at that point had been to therapists and my faith leaders, with her and then alone because she was no longer interested in therapy with me. And the most common advice I was getting from a lot of the therapists and even the faith leaders was, hey man, just do whatever she wants, man. Just try to make her happy. Try to win her back. So I told this Greek goddess sitting next to me how that had been the basis of most of my efforts to reconnect to my spouse and how it had produced pretty much zero results. I had spent at least 24 months sleeping on couches, the closet floor, and even away from home to appease her interest and distance. I had provided dates, flowers, notes, apologies. I had changed my habits and behaviors to try to align with what she had said she wanted. I'd done all of it, all of the above. And then she said it. The lady sitting next to me said it. It floored me. No therapist had ever told me this. And I don't think any therapist could even have gotten away with telling me this. But this incredibly dynamic, intelligent, successful Vogue model of a woman in a relationship with Apollo from Greece said this to me. She said, this is where men get it so wrong. They totally misread the situation. You are digging yourself a pit by that behavior. This behavior is the most repulsive thing there is to a woman. It's desperation. So she had my complete attention at this point. She continued, neediness is like relationship repellent. You're killing the relationship by trying to save it. We as women can smell desperation a mile away. So I stopped her. I said, I am desperate. That's exactly right. I have her. I've got these beautiful kids, and we're all on the brink of collapse. It has been killing me for years. I do everything she asks, and yet she still wants nothing to do with me. And this Greek goddess spoke me to words that I could not have anticipated. She said this, and that is your problem. You do everything she asks. No woman wants a pushover. You're acting like a, and she actually said this word that, I know what I'm thinking. I know you're thinking it because it fits the situation actually absolutely perfectly. She called me that on the plane. She continued, what you need to know about being with a strong or confident woman, and I'm going to presume that she is both because you are an interesting, handsome, dynamic man, is that we as women expect our men to be men. We are married them, we got involved with them because they were adventurous, mysterious, and didn't always tell us yes. Sometimes even, and I swear she said this, they they put me back in a place. They may put me on a pedestal, but they know when he deserves. And make no mistake, he does not let me push him around. And when I as a woman get emotional or even get on a bit of a tear or a bender or being unreasonable, my man stands there stoically and doesn't get emotionally involved into my emotions and even tells me no, in spite of my resistance and pounding, I want you to know something. It is very, very sexy. Seriously, my mouth was open. And she continues, and that confidence and that poise to be independent and to do his thing and live his life, and I get to watch him from afar, but he is mine. And when he comes home, it's incredible. That's passion. That's desire. That is a fulfilling relationship. Seriously, my mouth was hanging open. Did she just say what she had said? Was that the best advice in the world or the worst advice ever? And then she said to me, she continued, she said, and you, Michael, need to learn how to be that person, to be your best you and to do your thing and to quit trying to be who she tells you she wants. Go be the person she fell in love with. Now, there's more to that story that we will get to before we wrap up, but right now we pause for a moment because relationships therapy secret number 3 is this. Neediness or professed dependence on another is an absolute drain on the relationship. Many of you may remember Dr. Ruth Westheimer as a small little Jewish woman with a thick accent who was most recognized as a famous sex therapist, but she was kind of the unlikely sex therapist of the 70s and 80s. Today we have a woman whose name is Esther Perel. She's another dynamic Jewish woman with a thick Belgian accent who is one of the best relationship communicators I have ever heard. If you have not heard her TED Talks, it is your homework for tonight. The TED Talk specifically, she has got a couple of them. This one specifically is called The Secrets to Desire in a Long-Term Marriage. So within Esther's body of work, she reiterates the need for interdependence within our relationships. Understand the difference between the 3 terms. Write these down if you need to. Independence, no value or need for connection or relationship. Dependence, absolute requirements to be intertwined and connected, even repulsive for our self-esteem and self-worth. And interdependence. Interdependence is a connection of and of mutual interest in meeting the emotional and physical needs of each other. It is fulfillment, happiness, joy, and satisfaction within the engagements by choice. It is trust, it is choice, it is commitment, very different than neediness. I needed my wife at the time to validate me and tell me I was worthy of her love, that my gifts mattered, that she was going to take me back. And that was repulsive to her. Do you know what the number 1 most attractive trait and characteristic is between partners? And it is crucial to keep energized to keep a relationship moving. And this trait is confidence. So Esther Perel references studies that she has done where she had asked people, when do you find yourself most drawn to your partner? And the response she found was fascinating. And it parallels exactly what my seatmate on the plane was teaching. The responses overwhelmingly are related to scenarios where partners are apart but reunite or see each other across the room. It's almost as like a secondary response. It's related to that partner in their element. They see them working, excelling, presenting to others, socializing at a party, watching our partner in radiance and confidence, running a business, being involved with the kids as an engaged mom, an engaged dad, all those things. This creates an attraction and an allure that is unmistakably powerful. Here's your next relationship therapy secret number 4. Seeing your partner as an independent, powerful version of themselves is going to be the closest thing you do to creating that energy that attracted you to each other in the first place. So does that work? Let me share a little bit more about what it looked like when I followed that counsel, the counsel I received from that woman on the plane. I turned off the needy and I turned on the confidence, independence. And let me just say, it was hard. I had spent so many years as being a pleaser, for apologizing for my inadequacies and trying to be something else, that it was a hard ship to turn around. A few weeks after that flight, I grabbed my things and I moved back home. I had been out of the house for a while, as I mentioned previously. I did not wait for an invitation to move back in. I did not ask for permission. I simply did. It was my home. Those were our kids. And I did. And when my wife asked me, "What are you doing? I don't want you here." My response was not an argument. It was not an apology. I simply said, "This is our home. These are our kids. I am going to stay here." She was not happy. She stayed away from me for the next couple of days, hardly a word. It had been like that for years previous, so it was not incredibly hurtful, but there was a difference in me. I had let go of the expectation of her response. I had decided that I was going to work on myself and be the best version. And ideally, that version of myself is more effective in my relationship than the previous version that had been floundering for almost 8 years. The next time, my wife approached me was a few days later, and I was changing my clothes, getting ready to go for a jog. I was in peak shape at that point, and I'd really gotten my head around redefining myself into my best version of self. I was lonely and I was sexually non-active, but I was also connecting more with friends than ever before. I'd found a brotherhood of men who were often resources for me for venting and engaging about what I had been experiencing. I was in a different place than I had been a few weeks prior. So as I was getting changed to go running, she approached me and she was offended. She was mad because about a title of a book that I was reading and I'd left it out. "What is this? Why would you bring this into our home?" she said to me. "Around our kids? This is crass and offensive." The book she held up was a book that I was reading called The Tao of Badass. Whoa, was my wife actually engaging me in conversation? I was a bit taken back because she pretty much didn't say anything to me ever. I actually recommend this book as a helpful dive on how to understand the psychology of women, attraction, and relationships, and it lines up pretty well with the advice from the Blonde Goddess as well as Dr. Esther Perel. But the title and subject matter could be offensive to the prude or conservative, or to someone who just doesn't want the word ass where their kids might see it. So it's fine. It was enough to make her upset, so that in her home, the kids saw the word badass. So I listened. As I listened, I finished getting dressed as she expressed her anger. But I didn't react. I did not apologize, but I acknowledged her feelings. And this is pretty much what I said. I said, "I can see how this may be upsetting to you. You are a good mom." And that was all. I put the book in my backpack, behind my desk, and away from her impressionable eyes. I adjusted my earbuds, I turned on my music, and I went out and did my evening run. I felt exhilaration. I had not responded I had responded unemotionally. I did not apologize. I did not make excuses. I simply was who I was, and I was reading what I was reading. That run felt better than any before, and I can still recall the sunset and the beat of the music and the feelings of the warm air penetrating my lungs as I ran for almost an hour. I came home that evening with a full runner's high. I was sweaty. I felt very powerful. I walked into our bedroom and into our attached ensuite bathroom. I undressed and got into the shower. While showering, I noticed my wife had come into the bedroom and looking through the glass shower wall and beyond through the open door in the bathroom. I'm not sure how long she had been there before I saw her, but when I saw her, she hardly hesitated. She came into the bathroom. She stripped off her clothes in what seemed like one solid motion and was seducing me before the glass door was even closed. We had not been intimate for months. The arousal was immediate. We said very little to each other. The sensual tension was high, and what started in the shower, we finished in the bed. And the remainder of the night, we hardly strayed within inches from each other. So pause for a moment and take this in. Was it the biology? Was it just a fluke? Are we simply wired to be attracted to certain traits? What was most interesting about the way this played out is what I'm about to tell you. My marriage did not make it. Within a couple weeks of this passionate engagement, I was served notice of my wife had filed for divorce. I'm not sure if she'd actually filed before the shower encounter or if she'd done it afterwards. And I'm not sure if I had learned to stand up for myself previously, if that would have changed anything. But I do know this. There are scientific components to our minds and to our biology that are unmistakably wired to each other and can be explored and discussed and actually reprogrammed, rewired through proven therapeutic techniques and practice. This is not snake oil from a salesman or science fiction. It is proven and accessible tools that will enhance your individual life experience and relationships. So let's revisit the golden question. Here it is. Let's say everything works and your relationships heal and your issues become resolved. What would that look like? What does a perfect version of your life look like? What is it like with friends, career, personal life, love life? Describe that to me. Now tell me, what is this worth? How do you evaluate a relationship? Divorce is expensive, $15,000, $50,000, and that can be the upfront cost. Alimony and other support can run $10,000 a year or more over that. This course was $100. Did you get value from it? Good therapy runs in the $150 to $175 to $250 an hour, a range per hour. Would that be a reasonable investment? Without a doubt, I invite you to continue an exploration of all my courses. They can be found at the site menneedtherapy.com or manbrosia.com. And for some of you, you are ready to take the next steps and engage with a hand-picked therapist by me who follows the same methodology I do. We are not into endless sessions that drone on. I have been there. That's so not our style. Within our therapy style, we have specific goals that we set and we move towards that continually. And when your life improves, you will recommend the process to others who know no way out of the vicious cycles they find themselves in. We also invite you to support the cool merchandise we have for sale at manbrosia.com and support the brand. Not only will you look style council when you wear it, but 25% of our profits support we do at serveanother.com. Serveanother.com is a registered 501c3 entity that supports our podcast, curriculum, and expenses associated with all of our outreach. So final notes. I am passionate about this information and why I took the chance to create the information curriculum to help people like you. I want you to be ahead of the curve of where I was at this stage of my personal development. Why? Because when men are screwed up, the world suffers. We heal men, we heal the world. And that's not just filler either. Men are 93% of inmates in our prisons. Men are most common perpetrators of violent crime. Men are far more likely to commit suicide, yet are diagnosed with depression or other suicidal precursors at 30% the rate of women. Guess what? Therapy heals men. So now just imagine what it can do for you and all your boneheaded friends. Follow my podcast at Mambrosia. Embrace your inner masculinity, for better or for worse. Listen, to close up, this is the first step of a huge journey for you. And we're going to make it as painless and as enjoyable as possible. Thank you for following us. Thank you for joining the Mambrosia, ecosystem. And it's going to be worth it. It's going to get better. And I look forward to serving you soon.